Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Business Essentials podcast. I'm your host, Veronica, and today we're going to be speaking with Doug Brown. Doug is the Chief Learning Officer at Summit Success International. Doug helps business professionals and entrepreneurs improve their effectiveness and increase the income so that they can have the business and the life that they want. I'm really excited to speak with Doug, so stick around and we'll be back right after this.
Tony Robbins once said, "No matter how many mistakes you make or how slow you progress, you are still way ahead of everyone who isn't trying." This is the Biz Essentials. You want to grow, get ahead, keep the spark. Here you'll get valuable insights and empowerment to grow personally and professionally. Isn't it about time you turn your dreams into successful passion projects? Learn how to be productive, be successful, be joyful, and more importantly, be yourself. The B Essentials. This is the Biz Essentials. And this is your host, Veronica of Veronica Ventures.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great, Veronica. How are you today? Thanks for having me.
I'm well, Doug. Thank you so much for asking. I'm super excited to have you here. Why don't we start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
Sure. My name is Doug Brown, and I'm an executive coach, and I help business professionals and entrepreneurs transition their businesses from wherever they are into where they want them to be. So most often that is getting more time, making more money, and having the life they thought they were going to get when they started off on their entrepreneurial or their professional journey.
Wow, that sounds great. I mean, we all have that vision of what we want our lives to be. And when we start working, sometimes we forget that vision and get to a place that we don't necessarily want to be. So I know that was true for myself and a few friends that I have that are also, as they call themselves, recovering attorneys. When they discover their dream life is not what brings them happiness. So there's so much more to life than where you get. It sounds like when people come to you, since they're executives, they're already pretty successful. So what kind of things are they looking for help with, and what do you help them with?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned recovering attorney because I think I'm on career number 6 or 7 or 8. I started off as a lawyer, then I went on to the business side, and then I was a professor of entrepreneurship and innovation for 6 years before I went into coaching and consulting. And people can read about my bio in the show notes, so I'm not going to bore them with it at this point. But when people are coming to me, they've been in business for a while, or maybe they've been in life for a while, and they're ready to transition to their business. And they're moving into an area that's unfamiliar to them. So a lawyer, for example, might have gotten themselves very busy and successful, and they're kind of having the benefits and the curse of the prosperity. Well, now what? How do I move from just being the lawyer to being the CEO of my business? Because I'm feeling like I'm not able to make that transition. I'm feeling kind of stuck. Or if one of my clients had just purchased a company and he was an outstanding salesperson and an engineer, and he recognized that he had to have people around him as he learned to be CEO of this new business and transition it, that having somebody who'd been there and done that before as a confidential confidant, as someone to offer strategies and perspectives and help him slow down to speed up, that was essential for him. So that's the kind of people that I help. And what I love about what I get to do as an executive coach, as a business coach, is I'm meeting each of my clients where they are and not taking them through, all right, everybody starts in this one spot and you do 1, 2, 3, 4. Nobody's got time for that. They want somebody that can meet them right where they are and help them with the challenge they have right then. And so the customized nature of it is really exciting for me and useful for them. So what do they want? They come in and they start, a lot of them need help with time. There's so much coming at them. They need to make sure they don't miss something really important. They need help to prioritize what really matters and to learn to delegate and trust a little bit. Others will come up through technical aspects and they'll need help with sales. Like, how do I fill more customers? How do I get rid of the customers I don't want and fill my business with clients who will actually pay me what I'm worth? So they want more time. They want speed. They want to accelerate. And they don't want to spend the 25 years that I spent learning how to do it. They want to get the results of that and move right ahead. That's the kind of the profile of the person that I get to help. And having made so many transitions myself and fixed so many businesses and professional associations. I've seen it all. I've learned firsthand what works and a lot of things that didn't. So a lot of my sessions with clients are sharing, hey, once I did this wrong, you might want to try it this way.
Absolutely. It would be invaluable to have that kind of expertise without having to have all the downfalls of learning those lessons the hard way.
Falling down and getting up is part of being an entrepreneur, but it sure is nice to have somebody on your team who will tell you the truth, whether or not you want to hear it. And sometimes that truth is you're doing great, because entrepreneurs are really hard on themselves, sometimes relentless, and that can hold you back.
That's true. That is a very easy trap to get into, because it's so easy to compare yourself to someone else's like a reel that they put online and you never get to see like the B side, the part that's not so good, because that's not what they're putting online. So it's extremely easy to put yourself on a blast because you don't feel like you're keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak, or the professional version of that. But you mentioned you help your clients gain back some time.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I really struggle with, because with the podcast and my business and being a mom and everything else on top of that, time is limited, as it is for everybody, but crucial to be able to actually get stuff done. So how do you help your clients regain more time?
Oh boy. Well, I have a whole program for that. I could probably talk for hours, but I won't, because your people need stuff right now. I think the first big idea about managing time is that we can't. There's no way to manage time. It just happens. But we can manage the energy we show up with around time, and we can manage the choices we make about time. That's why I look at time as kind of a time mastery, as a process that we'll always be working on, and not this thing of, okay, I can check the box. I've got my time management down. I know what to do. And so one of the ideas that's most helpful for my clients is to manage your energy around your time. And when you start looking at and getting the facts of what you're doing during the day, because you have a lot of different roles. You have your roles, an entrepreneur has many roles. You look at what you're doing, there are tasks that you are doing that are sucking the energy out of you. And a lot of entrepreneurs will believe that, well, they have to do that. They can't trust anybody else to do that, or I need to do it myself. And the fallacy there is that if you're not doing it or not doing it well, you're not really in control of it. So a lot of people hold on to their bookkeeping because I can't trust anybody else with my books. Well, but how well are you doing? And when I talk to these entrepreneurs in transition, I said, so what's your average accounts receivable? What? So when you hire someone to handle that for you and you come up with a business process and procedure, you actually accelerate your time. So when you look at the things that you're doing in any given week, there's a whole bunch of stuff that isn't aligned with your highest value for your business. So I went in to work with an insurance broker. He was the sales guy in chief. He was an amazing salesperson. And he was getting caught up in all the operational stuff because he didn't feel like his team was following the procedures. So our mission was to allow Dave to go be Dave and have the office learn to run itself. And when we unpacked what was going on, it was a lot of stuff that he needed to learn about leadership, about trusting people, about having the open door. So when he was going so fast, his staff would come to him and then he would immediately correct them and tell them what else to do, which would demotivate the staff. A lot of the distractions that come up when you're running a business, when you finally go to hire people, is you haven't slowed down enough to take the time to really define what it is you need them to do and to define what success looks like. One of the biggest things is kind of taking inventory of all the stuff that's consuming your energy and you're paying attention to. And it's kind of cliche, I guess, at this point, but come up with the stop doing list. What are the things where you're not adding your highest and best value to your business? And how else might you get those done? And to change your default answer from I have to do everything to what if my default answer was having somebody else do those things and putting the right people around me? That's just one of the things.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I don't know if you could tell, but I was under my desk like writing notes because it was there's so much good stuff in there. I want to recap kind of what I heard to make sure that I got everything correctly. So I love what you said about time mastery, because it's true. You can't really manage time. It just occurs. I hadn't really thought about it that way. That was key number one. But what I really liked was saying that you need to take inventory basically of what you do every day and find out what actually needs your personal attention, then create kind of like a standard operating procedure for the rest of the tasks and find a way to delegate that. In addition, you have to make sure that you have great leadership skills so that you can empower your team to do their best as opposed to kind of stifling their own creativity. Did I get everything?
You summarized it well. And the thing that a lot of entrepreneurs are reluctant to do, and I was reluctant too, because I came out of big corporate, and among other things, is I felt like standard operating procedures, those are for other people. I don't have any interest in writing a procedure. I sure as heck don't have any interest in following a procedure because that's not who I am as an entrepreneur. And so I devalued that. And what I didn't see till much later was the people around me process information very differently than I did. And they needed that certainty. They needed that structure. And giving them that structure wasn't micromanaging, but setting up expectations about what success looks like, giving them the tools and having a conversation around that, and then letting them do their job. That's not micromanaging. That's managing. Start simple with the tasks that happen most frequently and that consume the most of your time, and make that building that procedure a collaborative activity. And don't just add it to your list as, oh my gosh, now I need to write down every procedure and every step of every, that's not where we're going.
That makes a lot of sense. And I feel like that those standard operating procedures would be a really good kind of living document, which would help your onboarding process when you bring on new employees, because you don't have to start from scratch again and try to train something that has already been written down and delegated and stuff. So I could see how that would save you a lot of time ongoing as well.
And it's got to be written down because so many people, especially if you've got a long-time employee, I don't want to write it down. I know what I need to do. If it's not written down, it doesn't exist. And then just by the way, I'm shocked how many business owners don't actually have what I call the keys to the kingdom. And that is the administrator usernames and passwords for all of their core systems. So if something happens to their key person, they can actually get into their system. Yeah, so that I can go off on that a long time too. But each of these little things, the things that we don't realize, I say you can save 12 hours a week. You can probably save way more than that, because every single time you get a distraction, whether you are self-imposed distraction, oh, I have to go buy something on Amazon, or somebody walks into your office, or you spend time finding files. Every time you're distracted, you lose 23 minutes. It takes you 23 minutes to get back on task. You want to have a fun exercise. Count how many times you're distracted every day, just by other people.
Oh my goodness.
Never mind yourself. And you'll save way more than 12 hours a week by having just simple routines, the daily planning routines in the morning to structure your day, to work in some time blocks. You'll save at least an hour a day, maybe two, by being intentional about your transitions between tasks. When you start tracking that, it's very easy to finish one task and then walk away and come back and you've lost a whole hour.
That's absolutely true. It happens to me all the time.
And the other thing I want to say about time and time mastery is we get ourselves into this productivity trap. Like, I must be productive every single moment I'm awake until I pass out, and then get up and do it again the next morning. And I operated that way for many years until I couldn't anymore. And it was only then that I saw that the downtime is just as important as the on time. You're better off having 5 quality hours of focused work in a day than being at work for 12 and getting 2 hours worth of good work in. So taking care of yourself and your capacity to do the work is critically important, and to be present. So like when you're have your mom hat on, you're doing the mom thing and allowing yourself to be fully present in that. Because otherwise you'll start in the back of your brain, there'll be guilt when you're being the mom that you're not being the podcast host. And when you're the podcast host, you're worried about being the mom. And the same thing happens for all of us. And as a result, we're never really present at the place that we're at.
Wow. I feel like you're in my head, because that's so true. And I totally do the be productive all the time. But yeah, I could totally see that playing a factor. So when you are being productive and you decide to, let's say I decide to limit my working time, which is going to be difficult, but okay. I'm going to decide to have some off time. How can I make sure that I'm as productive as I can be at the tasks that I delegate to myself. So assuming that I've already delegated all of the other tasks that I decided aren't my core focus, do you have any tips on how I can make sure that my time that I'm actually working is as productive as it can be?
Yes, and I'll try to keep it to three. One is make sure your devices and your computer and anything else are not making any noise for any reason. So that means your Facebook notifications, your Slack notifications, your texts, your Amazon shopping alerts, whatever it is, they all have to be turned off because that any one of those throws you off task. Number two is to block time on your calendar. So you're doing that work in time constrained blocks at the times of day when you're at your best. So if you're saving the really thoughtful work that you have to do for 2 p.m. when you get everything else done, unless you're the extraordinary human that 2 is your optimal time, because it usually isn't, use your prime time for your prime tasks and constrain those. So I'm going to do an hour block, 15 minutes off, an hour block, 15 minutes off. And when you know you have to get something done, the task expands to fill the available time. So compress the available time. And when you get close to the end of that hour, you can make a decision. Can I get this done? I'm going to intentionally spend another 15 minutes and wrap it up. Or there's 3 more hours of work to do here. I'm going to make some notes about where I finished, where I have to pick up. I'm going to organize things, and I'm going to decide when my next block is. So when I get back into that block, I don't spend half of it looking for stuff, trying to remember what I was doing. It's having that routine, that kind of little task shutdown.
It's genius. No, I could totally see this working because it is about, first of all, you want to meet that deadline that you've set for yourself. And then also when you're working, if you know that you have to be done, first of all, it's going to make you work faster, but also it's kind of like a reward system. Like if I just have to focus for 15 more minutes and I can go take a break. It's basically like doing time out for yourself, but in a positive way.
It is. And it's being realistic. I've got a good friend who wrote the book Brain Rules. He's a psychologist. And I was in a mastermind group with him, and I was asking him, I said, I can only get like 6 really focused hours in a day, but I'm exhausted. And he looked at me as he will do and said, well, that's because you're doing too much. I said, well, what do you mean? I'm not getting enough done. And he introduced me to this idea of cognitive load. And what he told me is that there's only so many hours a day of high energy focused tasks that any human can do. And it's usually around 4. Sometimes you can do a little bit more for a couple of days. So a high cognitive task might be doing this activity because you're really focused and you're on for your podcast. It might be doing your writing. It might be working on the strategy for your business. Now, there's lots of other stuff, answering emails and doing the mail that's not high cognitive load, which is why time blocks is so important. Because if you can really make the most of those 4 time blocks a day, you may have a lot of stuff you're not getting to. And then you got to ask yourself, well, do I really have to get to it? Because sometimes, I don't know about you, but I'm great at thinking up stuff I should do. And then I finally learned to filter it to say, well, just because I thought it up doesn't mean I need to do it.
That's true. And I'm really good at that too. Yes. I'm like, oh, I so do that. Get out of there. No, I'm just kidding. But it's true because I'm like, oh, that would be a good idea. And like you said, as an entrepreneur, we always have like these great ideas. And at least I feel like I'm always seeing new things that, we should do as entrepreneurs. And so it's very easy to fall into that trap of everything I have to get done and I have to get it done now.
What I do is I put that on in a parking lot list in my paper notebook. And then I go back to it every once in a while. And if the idea still seems cool, I might add it to a to-do list. But I don't put things directly on my to-do list because when I'm working in a day, I've already set up the day. There's really no extra room.
Interesting. I think I may have missed one of the 3 things. I remember you said turn off all the notifications, which I think is going to be huge. I'm totally going to do that. And then also set up time blocks so that you can take a break and make sure that ends. What was the 3rd thing?
The 3rd thing was related to time blocks, and that is to constrain your time.
That's right.
The thing that I see when I work with clients, and these are really successful people. And I say, well, look at your calendar. Okay. Is your stuff on the calendar? Well, what do you mean? So, the stuff you have to do. Well, no. So your calendar's full of other people's stuff. What if you put your own, it's like, putting the big rocks in the jar first. What if you put your own stuff on the calendar? Well, it might not be available to a client. Yeah. But how important is your stuff? It's this fear of missing out and having to be available every moment sets up unreasonable expectations for the entrepreneur and for the client.
Yeah. Now, we had talked about how 2 o'clock in the afternoon isn't exactly most people's peak time. Is there peak time that's kind of universal across most of your clients, or is that different for everybody?
I think it's really different for everybody. I've got some people who are great in the morning and they'll get up and have everything done. And their best time is, till 1 o'clock, and then everything is kind of after that. I've got other people who hit their stride at 3 p.m. We all humans have patterns. And so it's to be aware and conscious of what are your patterns. I've got one client who uses from 1 to 3 p.m. to go to the gym and work out because it's not a good time mentally for him. And that's a good time for him to take care of himself physically. And you can't be a slave to it, but you got to know your patterns, because if you're consistently doing what most people do, get up in the morning, respond to somebody else's to-do list, which is also called your email. And you do that for your best hours of the day. And then you're exhausted. And you go have lunch. And then you start looking at your stuff. But you don't have any gas for any cognitive work left. Then you're taking stuff home and doing it after the kids go to bed. So why start your day with somebody else's list? Why not start with your own?
So the way I see starting, based on our conversation, is first I need to make sure that I document kind of where my time is going all day long. And then also when I feel like I'm most on peak for my thinking and cognitive processes. And that kind of gives us a baseline of where to start scheduling stuff.
Yeah. And the thing the thing I have suggest that people do is I have a time task estimate tracker. That's just a fancy name for a document where you write down how long did you expect something to take, how long did it actually take, and why was there a difference? Because the other problem that entrepreneurs have is we're optimists. And we think something should take a half an hour. And in truth, it takes an hour and a half. So you have to, as you're looking at your tasks, you have to be real with yourself of how long did it actually take? And did it take that hour and a half because you got distracted, or is that how long it took? I've been publishing blog posts for a couple of years now. And a 300-word blog post, I think I should be able to knock out in a half an hour. It always takes 3 times that. Why? I'm trying to write good stuff. So it takes time.
Right. It would be good to keep that documented and written down, like you said, instead of just in our heads, because then it'll give us some insight as to how much time we need to block out for certain tasks later, instead of trying to continuously be the optimist.
And that's a lot of what having a good advisor, if your listeners think about having a coach, is they can help you see that when you can't, and get over the internal narrative, which is, oh, you must be really stupid or slow because it took you that long to do that, because you start telling yourself these negative stories, and it's all lies.
I feel like you're in my head again, but it's true. While we're talking about coaching, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you? Because just in the short time that we've been talking, I can tell that you have a lot of awesome information.
So my name is Doug Brown. I'm with Summit Success International. My email address is Doug, D-O-U-G, at Summit, S-U-M-M-I-T hyphen, little dash sign, success.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I'll leave you the show notes for that. And I do have something I put together for your listeners. It's my secrets to tame your to-do list. And so I'll have that link for you in the show notes as well. It's at summit-success.com/biz essentials. So that's a little download people can do to kind of get a handle on their to-do list. I've got this 7-bucket system to organize the to-do list into categories that will make it much easier to process.
That's awesome. In fact, that's so funny that you said that, because when you had talked about having a parking list, I'm like, oh, we got to get back to that, because my to-do list is like 3 miles long, and I think this parking list is going to be a good idea.
So that would be bucket number 8. So the parking lot is where you scribble stuff that comes to your mind that you're not sure what you want to do. And then the buckets are things like production of work, supervision of work, getting new work. And there's nothing magical about the seven buckets or 6 buckets or 8 buckets, but the idea is to take that to-do list and categorize it in a way so that when you're looking at your priorities, you can spend sufficient time on those things. So you might have a bucket that's, I've got my accounting hat on now. So I'm going to my accounting hat on. I'm going to make sure I bill on time, make sure the cash keeps coming in. And then you might put on your marketing hat. Now I need to do marketing, or your HR hat. I need to go hire people. But when you just have one giant long to-do list, your brain can't process it. There's a reason why our phone numbers are broken up into 3 digits and 4 digits, because cognitively we can't process more than 4 or 5 things at a time.
Interesting. And that makes a lot of sense too, because you hear a lot about that entrepreneurial feast or famine, because we'll focus on one thing. So we'll focus on getting new clients, and then we have new clients, then we focus on doing those clients, and then you get to the end of the process and you realize you haven't focused on getting more clients.
Yeah, that's that's honestly the place a lot of entrepreneurs are now. And in 2021, there's a lot of business coming in, and so it's easy to, I'll do procedures later. I'll work on marketing later. I'm not going to hire people yet because I don't know if it's going to go away. And those are all things that will, sure as I'm sitting here, sink your business, because it's going to slow down. You're going to need people. You're going to need processes. And we have to break the cycle of, I just got to get through this next thing, because there's always a next thing. So there needs to be time on your calendar. One of your prime things in the prime times is your CEO job, where you step back from being the person in the engine room and decide where you want your ship to go. And that time is critically important.
That's true. You can't drive somewhere unless you have a destination, right?
Well, sure you can. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm making good time.
Well, true. Okay. You can't drive somewhere effectively
right.
if you don't know where your destination is.
And Veronica, we take better care of our cars than we do ourselves. So if you're planning a trip, you're going to put it in your thing, you're going to check your oil, you're going to make sure your windshield washer fluid is topped off, you're going to decide where your rest stops are so you can get gas, and you're going to take your trip. How many entrepreneurs do that? If we treated our vehicles like we treated ourselves, we'll be walking to our destination. So we need to take this time. I have the CEO client that I mentioned. He said in a recent podcast he said, Doug was always telling me to slow down. And I always had him in my head about slow down. And that was helpful, because eventually I got there faster because I was able to slow down and make better choices, which included taking care of himself.
Yeah. If we were cars, we'd be those ones that are overheating on the side of the highway because you didn't stop to rest
flat
your
tires
car.
And out of gas. And yeah, right.
Exactly. Like radiator blowing up. We talked a lot about productivity and success, and those are all wonderful things. I know you also help your clients find themselves and find joy in their life and somehow still be really successful. How do you do that? Because I know that logically that those are not mutually exclusive, but it's really hard to focus on all of that.
I've thought a lot about this over the years, and I kind of wound up discovering a formula that has worked for me, and I realized I was using it, and I finally put a name to it. And it's the idea of pacing yourself. And I added an R because I needed an extra letter, but it's pacer. So starting with purpose, because that's the fundamental thing. Why are we doing this? What are you trying to create? Because you get power from your purpose. When you're clear on what you want to do, you know the people you want to serve and the problems you want to solve. So whenever you're getting off track and you're losing joy in your life and you're wondering, what am I doing? You can anchor back in that purpose. Mine is, having been a lawyer and made this journey, I don't want my clients to ever wonder what if. I didn't want to wonder what if. I wanted to find the thing I was really supposed to do in the world. A lot of my clients are doing the thing, they just don't know it. They haven't connected it to their purpose. When we get really clear on that, there's power. The A is for awareness and attention. When you're going through life, it's easy to get on autopilot and to become mindless. When you are aware and paying attention and taking action based on that, and you're doing that in alignment with your power, then that's part of where joy comes from. I'm doing the work I was meant to do, or the volunteer work I was meant to do, and I'm aware that I'm doing it and I'm in action. Now, the third part of it is you need to have courage. That's the C. And community and coaching and somebody around you who will tell you the truth. Because when you're doing the work you were meant to do, it's not the easy path. Because if it was the easy path, everybody would do it. And that requires courage to overcome the fear. The E in PACER is for energy, managing your energy, and the energy we put out in the world, how we show up, is way more important than anything we say. It's our impact on other people, and it's the experience we provide. And then R is for resilience, because you're going to get knocked down, you got to get up. So if you want to find the joy, connect with your purpose, pay attention to what's going on, be in action intentionally, have courage and use your community, manage your energy, and be resourceful, resilient, and rest. And I look at that as a formula. Now I geek out in my finance guys, and it's like a multiplication equation, because you know what happens if any factor is zero or negative multiplication equation, what happens to the product?
It all goes down to zero.
So if you're lost and you're not having the joy that you want to have, look at those factors and figure out which one of them might be negative or need a little bit of a boost. Because if you've got the world's strongest purpose, but you're not in action intentionally, or you're not acting in accordance with your purpose, you're saying this is important and you're doing something different, you're not going to have the joy in your life. If you've got a strong purpose and you're in action, but your energy is terrible and you're getting terrible results, you need to look at your energy. And the resilience, resourcefulness, Veronica, there's millions of people in the world who are doing the same exact thing that people in your audience are doing. And it's easy to try to keep up with the Joneses and say, well, who am I? Well, the fact is there are people out in the world that need exactly what you're offering, exactly the way you offer it, and they're not going to compare you to anybody else, and you shouldn't do that for yourself either. Because then when you're centered in yourself, you're going to enjoy what you're doing. You won't work a day in your life.
Absolutely. And I completely 100% agree with you on all of those points, but specifically that one about everyone being themselves, and that in my own personal philosophy is that everyone has that spark within them that makes them not just uniquely themselves, but a gift that they were given. And that's why they have that passion and that drive to get there. But a lot of the times we look and compare ourselves to somebody who might be doing something similar and say, well, I could never be that one person. But they don't realize that there's that X factor that is themselves that's completely different. When I first started this podcast and I started doing a lot of interviews, I had a lot of coaches that came on here. And I was thinking, man, what if my listeners are like, okay, another coach? Like, how am I, like, it's going to be the same message. But as I was listening, even though some of them were saying the same thing, it was hitting me differently and impacting me differently. And I realized, like, it's not just the words you're saying or the message, it's also the way the other person's perceiving it. So you never know who you need to impact in your life, if that makes any sense.
You know what, Veronica, it does, because ultimately we're in a heart-centered business. We want to be in a head-centered business, but it's when you have a relationship and a connection with someone and you say, yeah, I can learn from this person. This is one of my people. That's what I look for in my clients, because I've got a very limited practice, and that's on purpose. I'm only working with a very few number of people who are exactly the right people. So when I'm doing a discovery call, strategy call, I'm helping them, I'm giving them advice, and I'm willing to have a strategy call with any one of your listeners as well. And then if there's a fit, I really think I can help, then we can talk about it. And sometimes the answer is you're good, or sometimes you should get a coach and I'm not going to be the right fit for you. Because anybody who comes into this space as a coach or a consultant and says, I know what you need, before they've even talked to you, isn't somebody you should talk to. This is an intensely personal business. And you're picking somebody who's going to be your trusted advisor, who's going to learn everything about you, because there is no difference between work and life. So choose wisely.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can already tell that this interview is impacting me. So when I'm going to be editing, I'm going to feel it. I always do.
So I made a difference today with at least you.
You did. I have copious notes over here that I was taking, so I can't wait to get started on documenting everything that I do, because I think, first of all, it's going to be enlightening on how much I actually do, and then also I'm going to see all the times that I was distracted, which is also going to be enlightening, but positive.
Yes, and this happens to everyone. And the most important thing, I've been practicing meditation for quite a few years, is when you see that stuff, tell the voice on your shoulder that gets you down to shut the heck up. Because when you're aware of something and you see it, you say, yep, okay, I'm gonna do something differently. I'm not gonna get down on myself because I made a mistake. That's why so few New Year's resolutions ever turn into anything, because as soon as you realize that you didn't do what you wanted, you get down on yourself and give up. And don't ever do that.
Yeah. Awareness without judgment is certainly a skill that everyone should have. It's difficult though,
Oh, it's much easier to do it for other people than it is for yourself. I'll tell you that.
right? This is why we need coaches so they can do it for us. Or at least catch us when we're starting to be down on ourselves.
Entrepreneurship is such a lonely business. There's very few people you can actually talk to who will get it, who will listen without judgment, who don't have other agendas, which is why so many successful entrepreneurs have coaches. It's why athletes have coaches. There's something magical about when that relationship happens and how you're able to just break through barriers you didn't even see and just crush your goals.
I ended up getting a coach when I realized that all those successful people that I was looking up to at the time all had coaches. I'm like, okay, there's something here. There's something in this. Exactly. But oh man, I feel like we covered so much interesting information. Is there anything that I missed? Any last final thoughts?
This has been so much fun, and I so appreciate you having me on your show. I think the most important thing is to give yourself permission to slow down and some space to think, be aware of what's going on, and then respond rather than just react, because we get into reaction and mode all day long. My son used to be a volunteer firefighter, and there's a reason we call them first responders. It's because they've thought about it, they've practiced, they've planned, and they know how to go about it. So if you give yourself some space to slow down and think about what's going on and be aware, and to then make good choices based on that, then the stuff that I talked about earlier gets much easier. It's easier to manage your energy. And, we're entrepreneurs. We're not ER surgeons. You have time to think. Give yourself that gift.
Wow. So important and so impactful. I completely agree with what he said. But Doug, I want to thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you so much for your time. I also enjoyed it very much.
Well, thank you very much. I encourage your listeners to look at the show notes, get in touch if you'd like to talk or learn more, and check out the Tame Your To-Do List tips. I think you'll find it super helpful.
Oh yeah, I'm totally going to go download that right now. But guys, I'll be back to wrap up the show right after this. So there were so many great takeaways in that interview. The very first thing I'm going to do is download that guide that Doug made for us. And then I'm going to start keeping track of all of the things that I do in a day and how long it takes me to do them. That's a great first step to making sure that I'm being effective in my business. Send me a DM or let me know in the comments what your favorite takeaway was. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time on the Biz Essentials. Bye.
You've been listening to the Biz Essentials. Thanks for listening to the show. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information, learning how to be productive, be successful, be joyful, and more importantly, be yourself, and turning your dreams into successful passion projects. By listening to this show, you've already set into motion the most important part, starting. So it's important to catch the next episode. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. In the meantime, hook up with us on social media at Veronica Ventures and at the Biz Essentials. Till next time, this is the Biz Essentials.
Today's quote of the day is, "It's not knowing what to do, it's knowing what you know." Tony Robbins. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time on the Biz Essentials. Bye.